Good morning. I was having my cup of coffee and I was reading an article by Jack Dorsey. He published an essay called From Hierarchy to Intelligence. And I think it's one of the most important things a CEO has written about how AI will change the way companies work. So if you run a business, you haven't read it, I'd really encourage you to go read it, and I'll put it in the comments. But his argument is really elegant. He mentions that for 2,000 years, every organization on earth has been structured in the same way. There's these layers of humans passing information up and down a chain of command because no single person can hold enough context to coordinate everything by themselves. And you think about the Roman army, they figured this out first. They would have 8 soldiers report to a decanus, 10 decani, I think that's how you say it, would report to a centurion, and then 10 centurions to a legate. So every layer existed because humans had a hard limit. They could only effectively manage somewhere between 3 to 8 people. And you probably see that true in your company today. And that constraint forced hierarchy. It forced middle management. And hierarchy has really been the OS, the operating system of every army, every railroad, every factory, every company since. Now, Dorsey's thesis is that AI can now replace what those middle layers do. So not the people at the top, not the people at the edge, the routing layer, the information aggregation layer, the alignment layer. So what he set out to do is he's wanting to build Block as an intelligence, a single system that can hold the full picture, can coordinate the work that used to require a chain of command. And I think he's right about that diagnosis. He's describing the future accurately, but I think he's really only solving half the problem. Here's the thing. He's solving for the company. And now this might be a longer video. I know, Facebook isn't the place for that, but I want you to clue into this. I want to solve for the individual. Here's the question Dorsey doesn't even ask. What happens when you don't just replace the hierarchy inside of a company, but you give every individual human their own hierarchy? Now you think about the Roman decanus, they managed 8 soldiers. Those 8 soldiers, they could set up camp, they could hold a position, they could execute a flanking maneuver. The decanus didn't do the work, he directed it. So his value wasn't in his hands directly, it was in his judgment. So imagine a knowledge worker, a marketer, an operator, a strategist, a founder, with 8 AI agents at their command. One would research, one writes, one builds, one analyzes data, one designs, one manages a project timeline, and one monitors competitors as an example. One handles all the communication workflow. Now, that's not a person with a tool, that's a person with a department. The decanus didn't carry a bigger sword, he carried the decision-making authority to deploy 8 people who would each carry out their own decision-making. And we're entering a world where every single competent individual can be a decanus, not of people, but of machines that execute at a speed no human team can ever match. So this isn't replacing humans. This is strapping a nuclear-powered supercomputer onto every human in your business who knows how to direct it. So there's always been this gap between the speed of thought and the speed of doing. You can see the finished product in your mind in an instant, but it actually takes weeks, days, months to actually build it. You need to brief a team. They need to interpret what you meant. They execute it. You review it. It's wrong. You rebrief. They execute. By the time the thing you're thinking about exists in reality, it's a diluted version of what existed in your head on day one. And that's the power of where we're living. That gap between thinking and having the agency to do is quickly going away. So when a human directs agents instead of directing people, the translation loss shrinks towards absolute zero. The agents don't misinterpret the brief. They don't bring their own ego to the project. They don't need a meeting to align on priorities. They execute in minutes what used to take a team weeks to do less effectively. And when the output is wrong, you just adjust and you rerun, not in the next sprint, in the next 10 minutes. That bridge between what you see in your mind and what exists in the world just got shorter than it's ever been in human history. This is the key thought that you should have as a business owner. Every person on your team is a decanus. It changes what one person can do. So if execution is nearly free, fast, scalable, on demand. What's the human for? I would propose two things, and they're both things machines are terrible at. The first is synthesis. Synthesis is this ability to look at 8 streams of output, 12 data sources, a wall of competing information, and see what it actually means. Not summarize it, not organize it, but see through it to the decision that actually matters. Now, this is not analysis. Computers are great at analysis. Analysis breaks things apart. Synthesis puts them together in a way that didn't exist before. And if you've been using AI, you know the power AI has to help you even in the synthesis part. It's the person, though, who looks at the customer data, the market trend, the competitive landscape, the internal constraints, and says, here's what we do, and here's the why we do it. Not because a dashboard told them, but because they can hold all of it in their head at once. They can see the patterns. Agents can analyze, they can research, they can compare, they can tabulate, and surface correlations all day. What they can't do is draw the conclusion about what your business is capable of. And that changes the business. That requires understanding context that the machine doesn't have. The political dynamics on the team. The thing the founder said last week that signaled a shift. The customer segment that everyone's ignoring because the data doesn't scream about them yet. Synthesis lives at this intersection of data and judgments. So AI agents, they're going to supply the data at unprecedented speed. It's mind-blowing. The human supplies the judgment, and that combination is unstoppable. The second thing that matters is taste. Taste is the most undervalued word in business. We use it for art, fashion, food, and I think we should be using it for everything. Taste is knowing what looks right, what feels right, what lands for a specific audience at a specific moment. It's the difference between a pitch deck that checks every box and the one that makes an investor lean forward in their chair. It's the difference between a marketing campaign that's technically optimized, excuse me, and one that makes someone just stop scrolling and they feel something. We've all had that. That's the human between building a product that works and a product that people love to use. So agents are going to be able to generate hundreds of options in the time it used to take a team just to produce one. But someone has to look at those 100 options and know which one is the one, the taste, a taste that isn't data-driven. It's earned through years of paying attention, developing opinions, getting things wrong, and building an internal compass that points towards quality. I think this is fascinating. Imagine a company where every person has these agents. A machine can produce, a machine can optimize, a machine can't walk into a room and feel something that's off. It can't look at a design and know that it's almost right, but the type is doing something that creates distance instead of trust. It can't read a customer email and sense that the real objection is 3 layers below what they actually wrote. So synthesis tells you what to do. Taste tells you how you should feel or how it should feel when you do it. Now, here's what gets interesting for me, and I think for most business owner. The old model, you need a task accomplished. So you hire 8 people. Maybe you pay them $50,000, $70,000 each. Let's go with 50. That's $400,000 in payroll before you do your benefits, your management, your overhead, your office space, your HR, and all the coordination, the tax that comes with having 8 humans trying to work together. Half of them are doing work that's adequate, but not exceptional. And 2 of them are carrying the entire team. One of them's probably quietly looking for another job. And you, the owner, you're spending a meaningful percentage of your time managing this dynamic between these humans instead of directing the outcome. There's a new model. You're going to hire one person. You're going to hire the A player. The A player, you don't mind strapping a nuclear-powered supercomputer to the back, and you're going to pay them $150,000, maybe $200,000, maybe $300,000. And that person is going to direct 8 agents, 16 agents that execute at the speed of volume of a whole department. The output will be faster. It'll be more consistent, more aligned to the vision because there's one synthesizer in that group with taste making every call. instead of a committee negotiating consensus. You just went from 400,000 for average output to 200,000 for exceptional output. And the person you hired, they're not just getting paid anymore. They're doing more meaningful work. They're not sitting in meetings orchestrating people's opinions. They're orchestrating the outcome. They're not executing. They're thinking. They're not processing. They wake up in the morning engaged because the gap between their ability to envision something in their head and have the impact has almost completely disappeared. This is not a story about replacing people with AI. It's a story about paying the right people what they're actually worth, because you no longer need to dilute the budget across a team of 8 people to accomplish what one extraordinary person could do with the right tool. Every decade, someone claims the playing field has been leveled, and usually it's nonsense. The big companies adopt the same technology faster, they have more resources, the gap stays the same, or it gets wider. And this time, I believe it's actually different. And here's why. Large companies can't move fast on this because the entire structure resists it. They have the hierarchy Dorsey described, layers of middle management whose literal job it is to exist between the strategy and the execution. These people are not going to eagerly automate themselves out. The procurement process alone for an enterprise AI deployment takes longer than a small business owner needs to build their entire stack. But a small business owner, a founder with 20 employees, a service company operator who's already wearing 4 hats, they don't have this whole hierarchy to dismantle. They don't have layers that they have to peel back. They don't have lots of organizational change to do. They don't have a change management process. They have themselves, a credit card, and the willingness to learn. When a 10-person company masters this, when the owner becomes a nuclear-powered synthesizer directing agents across marketing, operations, sales, customer experience, they are now executing at the speed and sophistication of a 50-person, a 100-person, a 200-person company. And that, I maintain, is not incremental improvement. That's a structural shift in who can compete. The barrier to competing, it really has never been intelligence. The small business owners I know are some of the most capable humans on the planet. The barrier has always been execution bandwidth. I've been doing things in days that used to take me months. Entrepreneurs, we can see what needs to be done. We just couldn't do all of it, not at scale, not at speed, not with the polish that the bigger companies could afford. And that barrier right now is gone. The question is not, how do I use AI to cut costs? That's the first question I'm hearing people ask, and I'm telling you it's the absolute wrong one. Yeah, it might lead to a quarter or two of savings, a press release about efficiency, and then someone else with an actual vision is going to eat your lunch. This is the question. Who in your organization, who in my organization is capable of synthesis and taste? And what happens when I take away the title of their department and I give them a nuclear-powered supercomputer to help them execute? Because the answer to that question is the future of your company. Not everyone can synthesize. Not everyone has taste. These are not skills you train in a 2-day workshop. These are traits, ways of seeing, ways of thinking, ways of feeling that have been built over years of doing the work. The people who have them, they've always been under leveraged. They've been stuck in meetings, buried in execution, spending 80% of their time on work that is beneath their ability. Give these people an army of agents. Remove the friction between their vision and execution and watch what happens. Some of them, they're going to produce in a week what used to take the team a quarter. Some of them are going to build things somebody has never thought about before. Your leadership didn't even know to ask for it, because the gap between I see it and it exists disappeared, and they just started building what they saw. The 2,000-year-old hierarchy was a throttle on the best humans on our planet in every single way. And this showed up in every single organization, not because the structure was malicious, but because the physics of coordination demanded it. You couldn't unleash an individual because an individual couldn't execute alone, and now they can. The companies that figure this out first, they're not just going to be faster, they're going to be a different species of company. And you're a small business right now. If you're that small business, that species might finally be you. But you have to make the decision that you're going to understand and embrace AI for what it is. Quit fearing it. Get your hands dirty. Don't delegate it. You are the visionary. Who in your team is worthy of strapping on a nuclear-powered supercomputer and executing on their vision? What an amazing time we're living in.